deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, it's 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Monday, July 14th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Bill, today's a big day.
Oh, yeah?
Because it is the Queen of Colorado Radio's birthday.
Oh,
And that's my mom.
really? Hey, happy birthday.
Yeah,
Jeff's mom.
Janice Hunt's birthday today, July 14th, 2025. I come from a big radio family. My mom was in sales, worked over at KOA and other places like that, I believe, or maybe some of those other stations. I forget. They all kind of blend together in my mind. But she did sales. She met my dad, who was a radio personality at the time, fell in love, had 3 boys, went on to own and operate radio stations throughout Texas, and then pioneered a lot of the upgrades that took place where they would move smaller stations into bigger markets, do all the FCC work and stuff like that, and kind of what's called upgrade the radio station with bigger signals, bigger markets. Went on to build towers. In fact, I think she still might have built the largest tower in Colorado, which is a radio tower out in eastern Adams County. That was all her. So it is her birthday. Very happy birthday to the Queen of Radio, Janice Hunt.
Oh, that's wonderful. Happy birthday. That's
Love you very
fantastic.
much, Mom.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's
you
fun
just
to be in the
accidentally-
radio business, too.
Yeah,
with
and
her.
you just accidentally happen to be in radio.
That's right. Yeah.
You got,
I just showed up.
Yeah, it's great. That is so cool.
My brother was a radio personality. My other brother worked in radio. I was the last one to get in.
Yeah. Last one to fall to the dark side. Welcome. But the cookies are delicious.
They are. They are. So, happy birthday, Mom. Love
that's
you
so sweet.
very, very much. All right, this hour, I want to get into this. New York Times with a big article over the weekend about Joe Biden and his defense of the use of auto pen for mass clemency decisions. Okay? What has become clear is that with Hunter Biden, Joe Biden was sure to sign it himself. But with a lot of these other clemency, especially these mass clemency decisions, they just fed those things through the auto pen. And should auto pen be used for things like this? I understand lawmakers doing the auto pen thing for what's called correspondence, right? You send a little letter, Dear John Hickenlooper, I don't like your positions on the color of purple, whatever it might be, right? You send a letter to your lawmaker. Well, they have form letters that are sent back based upon the issue. If you send them a letter about Medicare, you're going to get a form letter back, and that letter explains the lawmaker's position on Medicare. They'll say at the beginning, typically, Dear so-and-so, Dear Jeff Hunt, thank you so much for your interest in this issue. Here's where I stand on Medicare. Please vote for me in November. And that's the letter that gets sent back. And they actually have dedicated staff that write these. They're called legislative correspondents. And their job is to write those letters back to lawmakers. Well, in that case, I don't mind auto pen being used. It's not that important. But acts of law, when you're the chief executive using auto pen, I got some questions. And when you combine it with all the other problems we ran into with Joe Biden's essentially sanity, his ability to lead this country, what was on full display during that debate, what Mike Johnson has said that Joe Biden didn't know, didn't remember some of the executive orders that he had signed. Yeah, I got a lot of questions. And I don't think presidents should be using auto pen when it comes to big decisions like clemency, and especially not executive orders or laws being signed. Am I wrong? Give me a call, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Now it's time for news and comment. Mr. Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. Monday, 79 and partly cloudy in Denver. Beautiful outside, expecting a high of 93 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story.
Good morning. I love this enthusiasm. I hope I'm as excited as you are about launching this show. This is amazing.
The great Scott Jennings on with Jeff and Billy this morning makes CNN watchable. Now he is with Salem also and on KNUS.
Well, we launched this afternoon. I've got a couple of amazing guests today to get us going. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is going to join us for a long interview. But then last night I was texting with the House Oversight Committee Chairman Jamie Comer about this blockbuster story in the New York Times about the Biden pardons and the use of the auto pen and whatnot. He's going to come on and kind of give us the absolute breaking news latest on what the Republicans are going to do about holding Joe Biden and his White House and administration accountable. Well, here's the thing. It's television, so people are going to want to have to watch it. And, you know, watching it doesn't just mean, you know, like some nerd reading off the, you know, the talking points you were handed. It's television. You have to be able to make it entertaining and
creative. And yes, the auto pen, as Jeff was just talking about. Big update in the New York Times. DJT closed door meeting at the White House today with Mark Rutte, NATO's Secretary General. I'm certain Scott will have more on that as well later on his new show. Friday was absolutely crazy. Plenty of talk about Bondi, Cash, and Bongino. All three in place today after the weekend. And Ghislaine Maxwell says that she would be willing to sit before Congress and tell the American people what happened with the Epstein list. That's according to the Daily Mail. And John Solomon of Just the News says that the real story is the secret case being built against the greaseball deep state going back 10 years.
There's a conspiracy case that was opened that looks at this window as a very large window. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a special prosecutor named by Pam Bondi in the next week or two. And why does this become significant? Because you don't have to necessarily then bring the grand jury or the indictment in Washington, D.C., where the 90% Democrat jury pool probably won't convict even if they had a murder. It allows them to go to someplace like Florida. One act of the overt conspiracy could very well be, Steve, that they raided President Trump's Mar-a-Lago house with false pretenses, and then you can bring the grand jury in Florida. You can bring the indictment in Florida because an overt act of the conspiracy occurred there. Maybe several overt acts of the conspiracy occurred there. You don't have to have a all-blue jury in Washington, D.C. that has Trump derangement syndrome. So
Central Texas with more flooding while still reeling from deadly 4th of July weekend floods that killed 130 people at least. Texas Governor Abbott said water rescues were carried out Sunday in 3 counties, and some communities were under evacuation orders. In Kerrville, which saw massive devastation in the earlier flooding, water was rushing over city streets. Evacuation orders have been lifted after several vegetation fires in Douglas County erupted over the weekend. The fires were reported near Laviers. As kids, we used to call it louvers, so that's why I said Laviers. Just after 2 o'clock Sunday. Tricia McLaughlin, DHS on Fox News Channel this morning on what they discovered Friday in California.
our ICE enforcement officers found 14 children, 10 who were unaccompanied. They were likely being exploited, potential slave or forced labor, potential child and human trafficking. So this is something that is incredibly disturbing. It goes far beyond politics. And not only were there 10 unaccompanied children at that marijuana facility, but we also apprehended 361 illegal aliens with heinous rap sheets that include kidnapping, child molestation, rape, serial burglary, hit and runs. These are no people who should not be in our communities illegally, much less around innocent children, David.
Amen to that. Criminal charges will not be filed against John Elway in connection with the death of his business partner. Riverside County, California Sheriff Chad Bianco says investigators found nothing criminal, and he considers the death a tragic accident. Elway's longtime friend and business partner, Jeffrey Spearbeck, died in April after falling out of that golf cart Elway was driving. Home Run Derby is tonight in Atlanta. The All-Star Game festivities continue. 75 in Laviers, 77 in Broomfield, 79 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
Tendons, I can see my tendons down there as they move, and the doctor is fascinated that I only slit the skin.
Whoa.
Welcome to the 7 o'clock hour of the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes.
I still love Tony going, I'm trying to eat breakfast.
Yeah, I sliced my hand open, and I was like the invisible man you used to have in like biology class where you can see through everything.
Man.
Yeah, you could see down into my hand pretty deep. It was pretty crazy.
That is horrible.
Yeah, but all my fingers still work, which is great. Doctor's super surprised about that one, too.
Man, no doubt. But if you just tuned into the show and you just heard that part, thank God it was your hand. I'm going to play it one more time.
Tendons, I can see my tendons down there as they move, and the doctor is fascinated that I only slit the skin.
Whoa! Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The week will start off with warm temperatures, partly cloudy skies, and afternoon and evening thunderstorms will likely reach to the low to mid-90s today, low to mid-90s Tuesday, lows tonight and tomorrow night 60s with afternoon and evening widely scattered thunderstorms. A cooling trend, highs will just be 80s Wednesday and Thursday, and a cold front will bring a very good chance of showers and storms. Weather is a service of L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. That's bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Phone lines are open. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Let's go to the phone lines. Matt in Denver. Good morning, Matt. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning.
Gentlemen, so good to have you back. What a week to start that vacation, though, as we were introduced to the greatest scandal, the greatest cover-up, and you can add a couple together and you won't reach this one, that the Trump administration basically announced about a week ago. And initially, I think there was shock and awe to MAGA Nation, but I think they're waking from their stupor. Gentlemen, there is no way he gets out of this without deep investigations. Am I way off, or is MAGA going to say he's all good because look at everything else that's going on?
I'm guessing you're talking about the Epstein files.
I'm talking about the only issue that should be at every dinner table, water cooler, conversations on the air. This is it. You take care of this issue. Do you know how many things, guys, this stomps out that we view as corrupted, as we think is the rot in culture? When you start here, the head of this nasty beast, which is child predatory, child molestation, not a single person, small sliver of society is okay with that, but it's an overwhelming, is repulsed by it. Gentlemen, you can't walk away from this one like you may have been able to lie your way around so many of the other government scandals. Am I way off, or is this right on the money?
No, I thought first of all, the response of there is no client list was weird because of the promises that there was a client list to be released. And then hey, we got to move on, guys. We got to move on. I think is totally misreading the room. But it seems like, I've always had the perspective that Trump has a good pulse. He got this one wrong. I think they're going to fix it. I mean, this is what Benny Johnson had about an hour ago. And I think this is there's only one path to fixing the Epstein memo crisis. Hold a press conference. Explain where the evidence is and why it's sealed. Promise release of all evidence after Maxwell's final appeal, and then drag Bill Clinton in for questioning. So I think Benny's generally right about that. It's bizarre to me. I think they're getting this one wrong, but I have at least faith that Trump is going to get this one better and right and address it and turn around and release all the information, because there's got to be information, right? There's got to be here. You have people that have been prosecuted for the trafficking of minors for prostitution. All right. Well, who was using the minors? Well, it's not a hard question in my mind.
Billy, is that your take on this? Trump will right the ship with MAGA and that he'll bring himself. I'm saying he even if he wanted to do that, he can't. He's captured. He's declared that he's been captured and that I can't cross certain lines. This is a big moment in America, because we can't just let this one under the rug and then show up in 2 years and say, we demand change. Well, hold on a second. Now, Donald Trump never repented or corrected the catastrophe of the COVID shot. Now we have another globally impactful crises or cover-up in the Epstein. I'd say, Jeff, does he even have the history of getting the big ones corrected? And as it stands right now, he's 0 for 2, and this one could doom him, though.
I don't know. I am less convinced, because I believe that the cognitive dissonance that exists inside of MAGA will already allow for an excuse of Donald Trump is right about this because fill in the blank. Whatever it is, I have to tell myself in order to make sure I'm not wrong. So I think their cognitive dissonance will warp whatever excuse or reasoning that Trump says. But I think where you're somewhat accurate is we have to go back to really like 2015, 2016-ish, to the kernel that started QAnon and the whole idea of this deep state of pedophiles that were involved in a vast international criminal conspiracy. We had a dude show up at a pizza parlor in Jersey looking for a basement that didn't exist based on this. During the first term of Trump, every time he spoke in front of Congress, it was supposed to be the storm. Finally, they were going to lock the doors and arrest all of those pedophile lawmakers. And every time that didn't happen, QAnon came back with a rationalization. They always excused the cognitive dissonance that was staring them directly in the face for whatever they felt was going to happen not happening. Same thing here. I believe that Trump will lose some supporters, but are they necessarily going to be outside of MAGA? I don't think so. And will Donald Trump do enough to bring them back into the fold? Yes. Absolutely, they did. But we have to also remember there are members of his current administration that trafficked in Epstein being the pedophile, and that we are just washing over the top of the deep state and everything else. So do I think it's going to change MAGA? No. I think it'll be an internal fight for a while. But because Donald Trump is the king and leader of MAGA, whatever he says goes. And I believe he's done a good enough job to convince a large enough portion of his supporters that truth comes from him, not from anyone else. So even if anything came out and said anything negative about Donald Trump or anything that he doesn't think should be said about him, he will be able to convince his supporters that it doesn't matter or to just fake news. He's done a great job doing that with a lot of other things. I don't see why it doesn't hold here as well.
Gentlemen, last thought. Will the average Trump supporter, Republican, conservative, Christian person, will they be okay going home at night knowing that their president for the good of the business of the country, because this is a business decision he's making by doing this, will they be okay knowing that some of our most heinous crimes are going to go untouched? These people are going to go untouched and in many cases elevate themselves in power. Do you think the average is going to be forgiving of that, knowing that our president, who we supported, made a business decision at the expense of children? And I think that'll kind of pull at the craw of a lot of folks that say, the king I was following, I thought he was a better man than this. This brings him back to the rest of the scumbags that are littered in D.C. But really good to have you guys back. This is the story. So you're hosting live radio, guys, just so you know, in the midst of the greatest, not the moon, not 9/11, not the 20. This is the greatest one of all time, and Trump has all the control in the world. Does he want to break free and fight for the people, or say, you know what, let's make a good business decision here and move on? Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Thanks.
Matt from Denver. His line will be open 303-696-1971. I don't think it's I disagree that this is the biggest story over 9/11 and
I'm not. I disagree. It's the biggest. I don't think it's the biggest. This is a huge scandal, and you and I have talked about whether or not we think a list exists, etc. But the part for me,
not a list in the sense that it was kept by some of the other. Heidi?
Yeah.
What was her name?
Oh, Giselle, whatever.
Heidi Fleiss.
Oh, Heidi Fleiss. Yeah, Heidi Fleiss. That
you know,
kind of thing,
there were actual prostitution rings.
Yeah, because they were making a business off of it.
Right.
We don't have any information showing this was a business or money or anything like that changed hands. Influence could have changed hands, but that's different.
Yeah,
and there are all sorts of things about that.
And I was looking at a Wired magazine article last night. Yeah. Wired has traced everybody who's ever visited the island. Do you remember this article that came out a year or two ago?
Yeah, they went through the flight manifest,
No, they went through digital cell phone tracking.
Oh, that was it, yeah.
They went through digital cell phone tracking, and Wired admits, and this is no bastion of conservatism, that once Epstein was convicted in 2008 of his crimes around trafficking young girls, there's been no friendship, no connection with Donald Trump ever since then. So it's been well over a decade since those two were connected. So I don't think Donald Trump's trying to hide anything that he's related to. I think these are rich, wealthy people that live a lifestyle that few of us can comprehend, which is they just get to do whatever they want. And they flew off to islands and they engaged in that type of lifestyle, and it caught up to them. And do I think Epstein has videos? Yep. Do I think that some of these rich, wealthy people, including maybe some princes of other countries, engaged in fornication with young people under the age of 18? Yep. And do I think they should be prosecuted? Absolutely. Why this isn't happening, I don't know, and I think Donald Trump's misreading the room by trying to move on from this. I don't quite understand it.
Yeah, the thing for me is it's difficult. This is the problem that I have a difficulty with is all of the screaming and gnashing of teeth and anger over a two-tiered justice system over the past 5 to 6 years, if not a little bit longer. And now in this case, I see a crystal clear example of a two-tier justice system.
That's been happening longer than a few years.
I know, but
there's the reason OJ died a free man.
But we've had a lot of people bringing it up. And the reason is it's a two-tier justice system. They're going after Trump when they're not going after these people. And now we have other examples of people that are being charged, sometimes with molestation, child trafficking. We can look at Sean Puff Daddy Combs recently.
Yeah.
The government brought a whole lot of resources to bear on him and didn't get a conviction. Yet the people that Wired magazine has been able to track, at least going to the island, there are no other questions. And so we talked about this prior to the election, that everyone was yelling and screaming, and I want to go back to this, the idea of a two-tiered justice system. And at the time, Donald Trump was saying Democrat, Republican, and you and I are sitting here going, no. The real two-tiered justice system is based on the number of zeros in your bank account.
Correct.
That's what changes how you get justice. And for me, this just proves the point. This is an example of those individuals that have enough zeros in their account.
So I'm watching Pam Bondi's interview or response the other day. They're doing a cabinet meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And Trump's like, I don't want to deal with this. But Pam, if you want to, she's like, yeah, I will. And she basically says that Jeffrey Epstein was a total creep and downloaded tons of child pornography.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then I'm going, well, then why is Maxine Clinton?
Yeah.
Why is she in prison?
Yeah.
For facilitating child prostitution? Was it all just to fulfill his desires? Is that why? But then you have all these other people traveling, and maybe, I don't know. I'm confused.
We have people that say, I was on the island and did things with people. I mean, we have those people that are having reports. So are they lying about it? Was it
right?
Not?
The victims.
Yeah. And
right.
here's another thing. Now, I want to go back and I want to check the timeline. I'm not 100% certain on this. And this is just something while you were talking about that and saying what Pam Bondi said during the cabinet meeting. I don't know this, but I'm curious, who was the DA in Florida when Epstein got the sweet deal and wasn't charged? Was it Bondi? I don't know. But she was Florida DA for a while. Was she the district attorney or the AG of Florida at the time that Epstein got the sweet deal? I don't know. I'm literally just asking the question because it popped in my mind and I haven't had time to go to the magic Google box.
Yeah.
So that's the next question I'm going to ask. But I'm curious because if so, this gets much more interesting.
You're starting to sound like conservative Twitter siding with Dan Bongino in this
that's
apparent
interesting.
feud that took place over the weekend.
That was interesting too.
Well, Jason in Denver with a great text message in. The White House saying there's no Epstein client list is a little like inferring just because Jeffrey Dahmer didn't have a printed menu, he did not eat anyone. The government knows exactly who participated in the crimes and whether a written list exists or not, and they should all be prosecuted. Jason, I agree with you entirely on that.
That's a good point, yeah.
Well, speaking of someone who gets justice, let's talk Dan Caplis with Dan Caplis Law. Dan has spent 40 years of his life getting justice for the people of Colorado. That's why he has such a sterling reputation, because not only does he deliver justice, right, he shares our values. That's why everybody loves this guy. They trust him. If you are hurt in a serious motor vehicle crash, any type of injury case, call Dan Caplis with Dan Caplis Law. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado state history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted, he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche World Champion organizations. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551 or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. Phone lines are open. Give us a call. What do you think's happening with this Jeffrey Epstein issue? Do you think Donald Trump's going to address it?
And Jeff, I just got a call off the air. Thank you. A big shout out to Steve. Thanks for the help. Because I was asking about whether or not Bondi was there. Yeah.
Yep.
Said no, it was the U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta that was involved in that Florida case. They said, but Acosta was promoted to Secretary of Labor during Trump's first term, but resigned when the Epstein question was asked as far as why you didn't go ahead and prosecute, and he got the sweet deal. So he, theoretically, lost his job because he went soft on Epstein when he was the U.S. Attorney. Now, we have no list at all. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, phone lines open, 303-696-1971. Text us at 720-819-5115. Mary from Wyoming saying there is a list. Maxwell kept it. Contains client information and billing and the types of girls wanted and those provided. Whoa, I didn't know that. Thanks, Mary. Appreciate that. All right, we'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Marty texted in, Acosta is on record saying he was told the Epstein list is part of intelligence and to back off. Wow. Well, I don't know. But I think Trump's post trying to push it off, saying, well, a lot of the Epstein file was put together by the same people that wrote files about him. And it's put together by Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, the losers and criminals of the Biden administration. Yeah, but I think what people want is transparency. And they want to see that from the administration. And when Benny Johnson posted, hey, host a press conference, be honest, explain where the evidence is, why it's sealed, and then promise to release all evidence after Maxwell's final appeal. Sounds good to me. But what the people want is transparency. And what they didn't get under the Biden administration was transparency. The New York Times over the weekend saying that Biden is defending the controversial auto pen use for mass clemency. This is from Fox News. Former President Joe Biden defended his use of an auto pen during a recent interview, shedding light on his administration's rationale for the controversial use of the technology. The interview in the New York Times was centered around his use of auto pen during the last pardons that he made during the end of his administration. In the final weeks in office, Biden granted clemency and pardoned more than 1,500 individuals in what the White House described at the time as the largest single-day act of clemency by a U.S. president. Speaking to the Times, Biden said that he made every decision on his own. We're talking about granting clemency to a whole lot of people. However, the Times reported that Biden did not individually approve each name for the categorical pardons that applied to large numbers of people, according to the former president and his aides. Rather, after extensive discussion of different possible criteria, Biden signed off on the standards he wanted to be used to determine which convicts would qualify for reduction in sentence. Instead of repeatedly asking the president to re-sign updated versions of official documents, his staff used AutoPen to put Biden's signature on the final version. Part of the concern that Republicans have with all of this is that there's a long trail of Joe Biden not necessarily being clear on what he was doing as president of the United States. You have the Robert Hur testimony that said, yeah, we should probably pursue charges, but if we did, with regards to classified documents, he'd likely not be found guilty because he's an elderly, well-meaning man. And then you have Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, saying when he brought up LG natural gas issues in Ukraine, Joe Biden didn't even recall signing the executive order that had to do with that issue. And now you have 1,500 clemency offers that were made, signatures that were provided that were done by AutoPen. Now, I understand AutoPen for correspondence on particular topics, from a member of Congress's office to a constituent asking about the congressman's position on tariffs, for instance. But when these become law, I think they should be hand-signed. And as some people have pointed out, really, AutoPen should only be used if the president's not in the White House, able to sign documents, might be away, might be traveling, but in that case, should still be able to sign them himself. That's my position on these. I don't think AutoPen should be used for clemency, for executive orders, for bills being signed into law. Bill, your thoughts?
I'm enjoying this sidetrack, but I'm also getting annoyed by it because this to me is like someone in middle school who is trying as hard as they can to make some sort of phrase cool. They keep pushing the phrase, sooner or later, the people are going to like this phrase. Wabanga! And it's stupid. Stop saying wabanga. No, it's going to be a thing soon. It's going to be a thing soon. No, it's not. All I keep hearing is that the GOP is just pushing this. It's another of the long list of we've got to find a scandal about somebody else in the other political party. And both parties play this game. And this is just how many...
You don't think this is a scandal?
No, not in the
You
least.
don't think...
No.
I mean, they lied about his competency, and the only way we saw it as the American public was when he went to debate. And we saw just how frail and out of it Joe Biden was. This is the commander-in-chief of the world's most powerful army, and he's not with it.
Here's the thing is, I disagree with the broad generalization that he's not with it. We had instances prior to that and post that debate that showed he was more lucid at times and less at others. That would be applicable to someone in his age group. And I understand the critique, but again, this is taking a debate performance and other examples and then trying to wipe an entire 2 to 4 years and taking that, saying what we saw here at this instance is what was going on for the entirety of the 4 years. And because of that assumption, we are now going to say this happened with AutoPen. No, we have contemporaneous examples that he wasn't like this for all 4 years. We also have contemporaneous examples that he was not like this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we also need to look at whether or not you have any information that says that the AutoPen was done without his knowledge or his approval. I understand the critique of the 1,500 clemencies, but we can go back to the questions to Donald Trump about why he didn't go through the 1,500 January 6th pardons, and he said it was too difficult. He didn't go through it. He didn't go through each individual case and decide whether or not they should be pardoned.
Did he AutoPen sign all of them?
But hang on. He did a blanket pardon based on a set of qualifications that he put forward. Exactly the same idea on the critique behind Biden. That's it. And if you're just worried about whether or not the signature from his hand or the AutoPen, guess what? The directives inside of pardoning doesn't care. There is no delineation on how it's supposed to be executed, and it doesn't matter whether or not it's an AutoPen or the person sitting there and we have pictures or video of them making the signature. That is irrelevant in the pardon process.
Do you think it should be?
No, I don't think it needs to be. No.
You think that a chief of staff with access to an AutoPen should be able to grant clemency to any person that they think?
Do you have any proof of that happening?
But they could under this scenario. I'm asking you about whether or not this scenario should. The way it's set up, should they be able to do this? Because
that's not the scenario
in our
we just
scenario,
talked about.
that person could do that.
That's not the scenario we talked about.
And you'd have no evidence that they ever did that.
But that's not the scenario we talked about. We talked about a scenario that was set up where the president created guidelines on over which group of people they wanted to have pardoned and then have that executed. Yeah. That seems to be okay.
You don't see any problems with the scenario that's set up like that?
Oh, yeah, I can see there can be problems with it, but the fact that both parties are operating under the same set of scenarios, I do think there's abuse inside of the pardon system. I do think that pardons are sold sometimes, and I think both parties do it. Yes, but
I'm talking about somebody that's not the president of the United States offering clemency.
I don't see any proof of that happening. You're going to have to show me.
In this situation, they could.
Yeah, and monkeys could also fly out of my butt. But that's not, again, it's not applicable to this.
You don't think that you think that those are the same?
Yeah, because I believe what you're doing is you're inventing a situation or scenario that is not existent inside of the conversation that we're having. You're saying, could this other thing outside of what we're discussing happen?
The way it's set up right now.
Yeah.
I see real problems with it.
No, I don't.
I think if you're going to sign either an executive order, clemency, or a bill into law, it needs to be done with your own hand.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it, and especially on the clemency and the pardon side. We're so loosey-goosey on that to begin with. And the other part is I don't see, even when the president is giving a parameter, et cetera, it doesn't mean the chief of staff then decides. So again, the parameters and everything else have been set up. You seem to be going to a place where a chief of staff goes rogue and goes outside of the situation. And that's what we can talk about. If the chief of staff is delivering pardons that were not approved or outlined by the president, that's an issue. But I don't see that happening. Even though we don't like how they were signed, in either scenario, I don't see that happening. And this is where I talk about, I see the Republicans trying to create a scandal that doesn't seem to exist. They keep trying
doesn't seem to exist.
Yes, they keep trying to hope against hope.
You have
that
a
they can
former
create this.
domestic policy advisor who testified for 5 hours saying she directed auto pen use, but said, no, there wasn't necessarily an effort to cover it up, but there were oftentimes just emails between her and decision makers around the president. She never saw the president himself actually make the decisions. Then you have Dr. Kevin O'Connor, who pleads the fifth the entire time around any types of questions with regards to his lucidity. Why would the doctor plead the fifth? Why wouldn't the doctor just go, no, yeah, like you just said, yeah, we had good moments, we had bad moments, but we didn't see any major cognitive decline. Why would he plead the fifth the whole time?
I'm not sure, because I'm not sure what crime there would be, but let's talk about what I see as a perceived witch hunt going on right now, because the GOP seems to be investigating, looking for a particular crime. So would it be advice of a lawyer from the doctor to sit there and plead the fifth if the GOP is coming after some sort of a criminal type of case? Yeah, I could see the lawyer advising for that one. But what we have in that testimony you talked about from the official, we don't have any testimony where she knows that Biden was not informed. There are people involved in that conversation. Someone on the other side of the conversation could have been directed or have known from Biden about his wishes, and that would make all of that okay. But she only has her perspective on what had happened here. And if she was given a directive by the president to go and make sure this happens, then she can go ahead and make sure this happens. Donald Trump does that a lot of times. He gives directives to the people that are in charge of departments to go out and make sure this happens. Yeah. I
don't think it's just conservatives. I think you have Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin, talking about how much cover-up was taking place within the Biden White House to prevent the media, in his case, from having direct access to the decline that was taking place. Then you have Mike Johnson's own experience about executive orders, or at least a executive order, that the president wasn't aware or even remembered signing. There seems to be a lot of evidence, plus a national debate for the whole nation to see, that the president experienced significant mental decline. You have the audio of the Robert Hur interview that took place where he stumbles. I mean, it's when you listen to that audio, it's like visiting a family member in a mental decline facility. And then you have a rash of 1,500 clemencies that were given on a single day. It seems to me, I think there's plenty of evidence that somebody else was running that White House. The American people deserve to know it. It is a major scandal, and I'm glad Republicans are researching it.
Yeah.
Well,
and inside of that, you didn't provide any evidence that someone else was running the White House. There was all supposition based on smoke and mirrors. Fair enough.
Supposition on smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Joe Biden's decline on the national stage was not smoke and mirrors.
No, but yeah, we have that instance, and we have one instance with Mike Johnson. Yes, we have a couple of
And you have
instances.
the Robert Hur testimony where you can listen to him stumble through and change entire topics in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah, but that's not unusual for someone in the White House. If you listen to Donald Trump's interview with Laura Trump, he did that routinely. I'm not saying they exhibit the same level of cognitive understanding, but the idea that they just switch topics in the middle of a sentence.
Bill, you have Jake Tapper's own books. He's not a bastion of conservatism.
We had a press conference in the last 3 days where Donald Trump didn't know when his tariffs were going to start or stop. He goes, what? Wait, where? And he had to ask for clarification on dates that were asked to him by a reporter. Yes, that's it.
Not the same. These are not even close to the same issues.
Where I'm going with this is you've outlined what you have are concerns, and then you've jumped to, auto pen someone else running the government.
No, we're doing
You're
it.
jumping
Republicans are
You're
doing an
jumping
investigation,
No,
and
you're
I'm
jumping the
glad they're
shark.
doing it. And
Good.
when they asked the doctor,
Good.
he pleaded the fifth.
Yeah, do that investigation just like you found the Biden crime family, right, James Comer? Oh, yeah, that didn't happen. Good job. Well done there.
All right, join the conversation, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Joe Biden providing clemency to lots of people. I just bestow clemency upon you. Is that good for the president? Do you think the president should sign them individually? Did the President Trump do the same thing when he did the January 6th thing? I just bestow clemency upon you.
Kind of my understanding on that one. That's what he did.
They also have done it on like weed convictions in the past.
Oh, yeah.
If you caught with weed possession, I think Jared Polis did that. I bestow clemency upon you. Don't even know who you are, but you were bestowed clemency. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is KNUS.